This is the story of our short summer cruise in 2019. Starting from Marchwood Yacht Club at the head of Southampton Water, we chose to restrict our cruising area to the Solent from Chichester in the east to Hurst Narrows in the west. Teal is our vessel, a hardy Commodore 36. There are just the two of us, Dan and myself, Graham. I am now 78 and she is 77. Dan had a stroke in 2012 and has limited mobility. That is one of the reasons why we tend to restrict our cruising range. On July the 20th, the inshore waters forecast between Selseybill and Lyme Regis was southwest 4 or 5, occasionally 6, veering westerly 3 or 4, slight or moderate becoming slight, with thundery showers becoming fair with visibility good, occasionally moderate. With an afternoon tide, we decided that we would go to Chichester, which we had not visited in 2019. After loading all stores and stowing Dan's wheelchair in its purpose-built bag on the stern of the boat, we were ready to set off. We find Teal is very comfortable at 1600 RPM, giving about 9.5 knots through the water. As usual, as we made our way down Southampton Water, there was quite a lot of commercial shipping about, including a cruise liner proceeding ahead of us. Our first port of call was the fuelling pontoon in the River Medina at Cowes. It was a very gentle run from Cowes between the forts and then on to the Bar Beacon off Chichester with the wind behind us. This speeded up video was taken using a GoPro camera attached to the mast using a time-lapse setting, so it is speeded up. Finally, we made it to our favourite anchorage at the top of the Thorney Channel. Hardly anybody goes there, it is just so peaceful and remote. It was a quiet evening with a summer sunset. The inshore waters forecast for Selseybill to Lyme Regis on the 21st of July was west 3 or 4, veering southwest 4 or 5, sea state slight becoming occasionally moderate in the west, fair, good. The day dawned very calm and sunny. We had a very peaceful, lazy day. The period before the cruise had been fairly hectic, so we were content to just chill out. The inshore waters forecast for Selseybill to Lyme Regis was southwest 3 to 4, occasionally 5 at first, becoming variable 3 or less, then becoming easterly 3 or 4 later. The sea would be slight, becoming smooth or slight with fog patches later, and the visibility would be good, becoming poor, occasionally very poor. We contacted our friends Fiona and Robin, who live near Chichester, and arranged to meet them the following day. After reserving a berth in Chichester Marina, we weighed at 13:30 and made our way past Itchenor to Chichester Marina, where we locked in and made our way to the allocated berth. It was very hot. The output from the solar panels was 115 watts, which is very high considering that it was well past midday and the sun was already starting to drop. We didn't need a weather forecast on the 23rd of July despite waking up to fairly thick fog. It soon cleared to a hot day with very light winds. After Robin and Fiona arrived, we left the marina and made our way gently down the harbour towards Itchenor. As soon as we were clear of the lock, Robin took the helm on the flybridge. He soon discovered that a motorboat at low speed can be quite difficult to steer. The rudders are really far too small for low speed work. Meanwhile, Dan and Fiona were able to sit out on the foredeck enjoying the cooling breeze created by our motion through the water. This section of the time-lapse video shows Teal proceeding through the moorings above Itchenor. As we passed Itchenor, I took over control and switched on the autopilot. This steers the boat much more efficiently than any human helmsman. We proceeded down the harbour, gradually speeding up to the permitted 8 knots and trying to avoid the dinghy training fleets. Once clear of the harbour, the throttles were opened to let the diesels clear their throats. We did not go far and soon turned round to re-enter the harbour. Gently, we made our way back to the anchorage in the thorny channel. We enjoyed a quiet lunch with all the windows open. It was far too hot to go outside. This part of Chichester Harbour gives the feeling of space, peace and sky. We made our way back towards Itchenor on the rising tide. Contacting the marina on the VHF, we discovered that they were having problems with one of the lock gates which was jammed. We waited until the late afternoon, but I did not want to navigate back down the river in failing light if they failed to get the lock gate working. We were able to drop Robin and Fiona on the waiting pontoon outside the lock gate. We returned to the anchorage in the Thorny Channel for the night. The inshore waters forecast gave southwest 4 or 5, becoming variable less than 3, then easterly 4 or 5 later, with the sea slight or moderate, fog patches, moderate or good visibility, occasionally very poor. The outlook was for the wind to continue fairly fresh but veering back into the west. Our plan was to go to Newtown, and the tides were such that by making a morning passage we could reach Newtown before the wind freshened again, and that was how it turned out. After leaving Chichester Harbour, we attained a cruising speed of about 9.5 knots through the water, to which the favourable tide could be added. We passed the no man's land fort for heading towards Cowes. Gradually we overhauled this elegant motorboat. With the engines barely ticking over, we entered Newtown Harbour. This is the section where most boats anchor. We prefer to go further on. the little motorboat ahead was in our favourite spot, and later in the evening we would return there when she had left. Meanwhile, we proceeded further up the harbour. I spotted a possible space in which we could anchor, turned the boat round and headed towards it. Once at the spot where I wanted to anchor, I was able to lower it from the lower steering position, and you can probably hear the chain rattling out. Then a slight touch astern on the engines to make sure that the chain paid out on the bottom. Now, a quick look at the chain marks to gauge how much more chain was needed. It can be fairly critical in Newtown because there is never very much swinging room. Finally, I went to the bow and using the foot control got out exactly the amount of chain I wanted, about 20 metres. We prefer to anchor well up the eastern arm of Newtown Creek because there tends to be more varied wildlife there, including a family of about 6 seals that have taken up residence in the last few years. Later we moved down the creek and anchored in our favourite spot. It was a quiet, hot, sunny afternoon. Real gin and tonic weather. The morning dawned still. We would have stayed in Newtown, but we were getting short of water, so we decided to try and go into Yarmouth. We rang them, and they were reluctant to take us because some 200 boats were due to arrive the following day for a classic yachts weekend. However, when we undertook to leave before 11 that morning, they were happy to accept us. It was just a gentle run down the coast to Yarmouth. On arrival, we were guided to our allocated berth. We were in time to go round to the Royal Solent Yacht Club, where we had an absolutely excellent lunch. While Dan slept during the afternoon, I replenished our stores in the town. It was a misty morning. The forecast indicated a deterioration in the weather. We wanted to get away early before the expected 200 boats started to arrive. At 7:45 we started the engines and made our way gently across the Solent into Keyhaven. There was an empty buoy which we were able to pick up. Looking back, we could compare the space and peace of Keyhaven with the crowds of boats in Yarmouth. During the morning there was a slight drizzle, but it cleared. The clouds were building into what threatened to become cumulonimbus. The next morning we woke to benign sunny conditions. The wind was due to go into the northwest, which is the most sheltered direction for Keyhaven. This little harbour gives an immense feeling of space with huge skies. As the morning progressed, an increasing number of boats could be seen across the Solent as the racing from Yarmouth got underway. Some of the big fleets were racing through the Hurst Narrows. That afternoon I launched my little radio-controlled laser. I only have one, but I've used a split screen here to make it more interesting to look at. These days it is the only way I have to practice my sailing skills other than sailing our little Walker Bay dinghy. For the rest of the afternoon and evening, we just enjoyed the views across to Hurst Castle and the shelter of the deck saloon. We were paying close attention to the forecast for the next few days. The inshore waters forecast gave southwest 3 or 4, becoming southwest 5 or 6, then variable less than 3. But the outlook was for it freshening to east to southeast 4 to 6. Moreover, the television forecast was showing a strong depression moving up the channel for the following day. It was time to go back to Newtown, which would be much more sheltered. We had planned to go over to Newtown the next morning. However, the owner of the mooring we were using came back and we had to shift and anchor closer to the entrance. So we changed our mind and decided that it would be better to go direct to Newtown during the afternoon when the tide permitted. With the anchor cleaned and stowed, the exit from Keyhaven is straightforward, as shown in this time-lapse video clip. It takes less than an hour to get across to Newtown. We were able to anchor in our favourite spot and take stock of our surroundings. It was a peaceful afternoon. During the evening, the sky began to show signs of the more vigorous weather to come. The early morning TV weather forecast confirmed the inshore waters forecast, which read variable less than 3, becoming east or southeast 4 to 6, then southerly 4 to 7 later. The outlook was for the wind to freshen to a full gale. For peace of mind, we decided to move to the southern end of the harbour and pick up a buoy. The morning was amazingly benign. Indeed, I even got out the Walker Bay dinghy and went for a very pleasant sail. Unfortunately, I didn't get the GoPro camera settings right, so there is no video of that. During the afternoon, the cloud gradually built up and the wind freshened. The evening television weather forecast reflected what we could see with our own eyes in the sky above.
So tomorrow thunderstorms are on the cards. We are looking at hail, lightning and really gusty winds, perhaps gusts along the south coast of 40 to 50 miles per hour. Very strong winds indeed, all courtesy of this area of low pressure spinning northwards across the country. Come Tuesday it moves further northwards, Wednesday, Thursday it's out towards the North Sea, and for Thursday we may see some drier conditions. Through the course of the day it will be quite windy, tomorrow more so, and then as the week progresses the winds will gradually ease.
The day ended with an angry sky. During the morning, the wind freshened steadily. One boat decided to leave before the wind shifted back into the west. We just sat and watched the great drama of the weather unfold through rain-covered windows. It continued to blow through the afternoon, but the barometer eventually started rising, showing that the cold front had gone through and the skies started to clear. Once again, we witnessed some dramatic cloudscapes. As the front had passed, the wind had shifted to westerly, and our mooring was slightly exposed to waves coming in through the harbour entrance, not so comfortable. Through the night, the wind continuously eased. We had an early breakfast and by 09:30 we were on our way up the West Solent. Our destination was the Royal Southern Yacht Club at Hamble, where we hoped to meet some friends the following morning. That is Calshot in the foreground, with the River Hamble at the top of the picture. Eventually, we approached the channel into the River Hamble, gradually slowing to the regulation speed of 6 knots. Entering the river, we had Port Hamble Marina to port and the Warsash Maritime College to starboard. Once we were well into the river, I moved control to the flybridge because it is far easier to see what is going on from there. I had called the bosuns at the Royal Southern Yacht Club, so I knew there would be someone there to take my mooring lines. They're very helpful and realise that in such circumstances I am almost single-handed. Quick glance astern to see that it is safe to cross the channel and start the turn into the Royal Southern Yacht Haven. At very low speeds, the rudder is almost totally ineffective, and you rely on the bow thrusters and the throttles to manoeuvre the boat into final position. After a quiet night, we waited for our guest crew, Ian and Sheila, to arrive. Although Sheila had been on Teal before, it would be a first time for Ian. The forecast was promising, with the prospect of only moderate winds and no rain. By 10:30 we were on our way, proceeding down the river and out into the Solent. Gently we nosed our way into Cowes, passing the Royal Yacht Squadron and the Royal Ocean Racing Club. Cowes was extremely busy as the fleet for the forthcoming Fastnet race was assembling. My original plan had been to go to Shepherd's Wharf Marina and have lunch at the excellent tapas bar just outside. However, it was clear that there would be very little space, so we abandoned that idea and went straight on to the Beaulieu River. It is a short crossing and the channel is easy to find, with Red Dolphin marking the outside of the channel and a white boathouse on the beach being very visible from a long way off. As we were quite early, and as Ian had not seen the river from the water before, we gently made our way up the river as far as Buckler's Hard, before retracing our steps to anchor for lunch at the bottom of the river. It was very hot outside, so our buffet lunch was taken in the saloon, where we could sit in the shade and admire the view. It was then just a gentle run back to Hamble, where we made fast at the Royal Southern Yacht Club at 16:15. Having said farewell to our guests, we adjourned to the Royal Southern Yacht Club for a very enjoyable end-of-cruise dinner. We left early on the 2nd of August, in quiet conditions, to gain benefit of the tide flooding up Southampton water. The banks on either side of the channel were exposed as we nosed down the Hamble estuary out into Southampton water. Then it was a simple passage up Southampton water as far as Dockhead, where we slowed down to the 6 knots speed limit. By 09:45 we were safely alongside the pontoons at Marchwood Yacht Club and started the process of unloading. We were almost ready to get into the car and drive Dan home when she stood up inside the saloon to come ashore to the car. She lost her balance and tumbled down the steps into the aft cabin, cracking 2 ribs and her sternum. It was a dramatic but rather sad end to a successful cruise.